is your will, my master.
What's up, guys? This is going to be a full install tutorial on this Spectre 6 by Phoenix Props. This is a very unique install. This is something that I didn't know how to do a long time ago, but thanks to Tatiana Ostrovsky, if you guys are part of the community, you know who she is. She's very versed in CFX, and then also even more so, she's willing to lend her hand to help anyone whenever they need it. So she spent quite a few days going over this with me over a year ago when I did my first one, helping me to get it to work, right? So because this has, it obviously has a blaster feature that I wanted to work. So, you've got your trigger mechanism here, you've got an auxiliary over here, and then you've got this toggle switch right here that you flip back and forth. So when you have the blade ignited, you can flip this, it will kill your blade and it will go into blaster mode. And then I've got a blue LED here, which is something that I'll be doing on this guy. This is the one that we'll be installing. This one is mine that's installed already. And I'll do a demo video on this sometime later. But most of this video will just be me installing this guy and trying to talk all the way through it so that you can do yours if you have one and you want to attempt it. And then I will try to remember in the same video to put a copy of the config file, or just go over the config file that you need. This will be for CFX. If I don't remember to do that at the end of this video, I'll make another video and post it, so that you can go over that too, because the config file is really the hardest part, I think, of this of this entire install. Wiring it up is fairly simple. But we'll go over all that, and I hope you enjoy it, and let's get into it. Thanks for watching. Okay, this is a long one, so we'll try to muscle our way through it. Okay, this is the Spectre 6 that we're going to be doing. This belongs to a guy named Jeff, so thank you, Jeff, for having me do this. First of all, I'm not going to mention his last name because he doesn't want to be mentioned, but that's okay. So we're going to put this off to the side for a second and go over everything that we're going to need. Put this right here. This is the chassis I came up with. Just to say this right up front, this may not be the best way to install this guy. It's definitely not the only way. This is just my way. All right. So this is my chassis that I came up with for this saber about a year and a half ago, and it works out well, right? Takes an 18650, but it's a static battery. That battery is going to go about right here. So we've got our CFX board. This just came back from repair, although there's nothing wrong with it. My own misunderstanding, or just I didn't realize that the new MK2 boards that are out, they need to have a firmware of, the 0.006 firmware in order for the new sensors to work for the motion controls. So I sent this out for no reason, and now it's back, and that's what we're going to be using. It's a perfectly good board. So CFX board. This main chassis, the board will go here. It does take a recharge port, standard recharge port. That's going to go here. I use a Microdean connector. I use two Microdean connectors for the speaker. These are Microdean connectors right here. One goes here, obviously, and then the other one goes in the speaker pod that we'll be using. This takes a 24mm speaker. I'll be using the Smuggler's Outpost speaker right here. And then, this has a little nipple on it, if you can see that. Now you can see it right there. So whenever it fits right in here and snaps in place, and that's how the speaker gets connected right there. And like with that Microdean connector, you'll be good to go. So that's the main chassis, speaker pod chassis. This is our Neopixel holder. I'm going to be using CC Saber's lit connector on this guy. It'll be held in here. This saber takes a 7/8 inch blade, so that's what we'll be using. I'll show you what I do with these. I don't hardly ever use these holders that come with the PCB, although they are handy, and I'll show you why. this is a actual a handle that I made for the speaker pod. It gets glued in front of the speaker like that so that you can pull it out of the hilt. And we'll go over all that as well. That off to the side. This is actually the trigger for this saber, because the saber was sent off for weathering before it came to me, and then the trigger wasn't put back in, which is no big deal. So that's just the trigger. We went over the Microdean connector. This is the switch that I use to switch back and forth between blade and blaster. Hopefully you can see that. And then I also had to make a little chassis piece to hold that switch. And it's just this round piece right here. Looks like that. And it goes under here basically, right where the switch is at, obviously. So we'll be using that. This is just a neoprene piece that comes with the saber, because once you put your switch in this hole right here, then at the very end, this neoprene has a sticky back, a 3M sticky back. You put it right over your switch so that you can never see your switch. That's what that is. So we'll put this right over here. I'm using a blue LED for the blaster. And you know, you can use whatever LED you want. I like to use blue. It's accurate, so that's what we're using here. So along with the blue blaster, or the blue LED for the blaster, I have a 13 ohm resistor right here that goes along with that. Okay. And then we're going to be using the tangible font selection accessory on the CFX board, and in order to do that, you have to have a 10K resistor, and so that's what this guy is right here. And then of course our battery, right? So I think we went over all the parts needed. Now onto the saber. The saber has to come apart, and there's a lot of moving parts. Just open this up here. We need to take this apart, right? So the first thing we want to do is I'll take this lens cover off for the blaster. I'll just unscrew it. There's two modifications that I have to do to this saber in order to install it my way. This piece will unscrew first. Just like that. And when you take this off and put it off to the side, you have a little acrylic lens for your blaster. So we'll put that off to the side as well. And then this little piece falls out. Now, the one thing I did do before this video is this piece does not come with a hole in the middle. I went out to the garage and I drilled a hole in the middle, and then I cleaned it up. If you can see that, I cleaned it up on both sides with a Dremel. So I didn't have any sharp edges, which is one of my bugaboos, right? If you're going to drill holes, clean it up so you don't get any sharp edges that could cut your wire or whatever. But I take that hole, I drill in the middle, because I take my LED and I put it in there, and then I glue it down, right? So it's facing out like that, and that's our blaster. We'll put all this off to the side. This cap right here is on with a magnet, so you could just pop it off, just like that. Put it off here. You can take this piece and unscrew it. This is the piece that will have your blade retention screw, although this particular saber is missing the blade retention screw, so I'll replace that before I send it out. But it's that guy right there. Put this off to the side. Once you take that off, this should pop right off. Right? Now you've got 3 of these. You've got 1 here, and you've got 2 here. You need to pay attention to where these go, because it matters. Right? So we'll just unscrew it with our thumb. Take this one out. Put it in a place where you know which one of these go back to which one, because they need to go back to their respective holes. And we'll take this one out. When you take this one out, the red switch will come off too. So I'll usually just unscrew that, take the red switch off. I'll put it right with that guy and set this off to the side. That's where our switch will go. I'll turn over here and take this out. So now we've got all that apart. Now when you look down in there, if you can see that, down in here there's 4 bolts. And there's another 4 bolts right here. They're all the same size, so those all need to come out. And again, you need to make sure you pay attention. These 4 bolts need to go up here. And these 4 need to go down here. Now, you can switch them. It's not that big of a deal, but it's best just to keep them where they go. We'll take those out real quick. So we got those 4. We'll set these off to the side. We know these are top. And you got to go deep in here and get these. This has a little crud from the weathering, but no biggie. There's one. There's 2. And one more. If you have a long regular Allen wrench, that works well too, but I've just used mine so many that they've kind of worn down on the tips, so this little tool kit right here works well for me sometimes. This is like $5 at Hobby Lobby and it's awesome. There's 4. So we'll set these 4 screws off to the side and make sure that we remember these go in the front where the blaster is. Once you do that, you can take this piece and pull it forward a little bit like this. You hear that little click. Now you can move this entire piece will come out just like that. This ring comes off if you want it to. Got this right here. This box will come out if you want it to. There's really no need for it to come out though, so we're just going to leave that in there for now. Okay. Actually, we're going to go ahead and take it out because we need to do something. We're going to take this piece off as well. This is for your aux or your trigger. I just like to leave the screws right in this box if I can. Just leave them in here. That way you know that's where they go, and then you won't lose them. I'll set that off to the side. Get that little bit of crud out of there, like some steel wool or something. And then we're not going to mess with this piece right now. Now, I said earlier there's two modifications I had to do. One was to drill a hole in the middle of this guy for the blaster, and the other one is I like to come over here. I will take this out to the garage, and I will drill my own PCB holder retention screw for my 7/8 inch PCB holder, right, that goes in here. And I like to do that. If you look closely in there, you may not see it in the light, but there are some threads right here. There's about a 1/2 inch worth of threads or so. I will make that PCB retention screw right below the threads, right? And that's what I'll do there. So I'm going to stop this video, go out to the garage, drill and tap that guy, and then I'll come right back and we'll get cracking on installing this thing, because after I do that, it's just a matter of going to town on this. All right, thanks. Okay, so you can see right here, I drilled and tapped that hole right there, and then hopefully you can see, like, I went in and I cleaned it with my Dremel on the outside, and on the inside I just used a hand file, so there's no sharp edges. And I just like to have no sharp edges if I can, and that's going to be for a little 832 grub screw that we'll use later on. Okay, and that's the last modification I think I have to do to this guy to make it work. Sometimes I have to come in, like on mine, I actually did not have the wire path for my auxiliary switch, and I had to come in here and drill a hole. But this one's in here and it's good to go, so I don't have to worry about that. All right, so we can get rid of this tool. Little tool chest. I'll turn my iron on. We'll put this off to the side. Well, before I do, actually, let's talk about this door right here, because we're going to take this off and then I'm going to tell you what I do with it. So this door, this is where I join all my wires. All right, because I have to wire everything, all my components from the top side. I bring the wires out this door right here. I wire my chassis and bring those wires out through this door right here, and I join all those wires, and that's how I get this to work, so there's not a ton of wire slack. So we need to take this door off. These are the only flathead screws on this saber, but I'll go ahead and I'll put it with the door anyway so I don't lose them. This is riveting stuff here to watch me unscrew this. Some of this might be boring. You can fast forward it. I like to do, if I'm going to do an install video, I'm just going to do it from start to finish, and then that way you can see how I did everything. Mine is taking it out and drilling and tapping a hole, but that's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to pop this door off. It's on there pretty tight. Pop it off just like that. We'll take our 4 screws and put it right on the door. Set that off to the side. And that, yeah, so that's where I use, that's the hole I use to join all my wires. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this switch back on while we've got this sitting right here. We will need to adjust the bolt in the switch so that it makes contact with the tactile switch later. But for right now, we'll just glue it on, or I mean, we'll just screw it on. Maybe. Hold it in there with our finger. just like that. So it's nice and tight for now, but we'll adjust that and use just a little bit of glue later to hold the adjustment so that it actually has a movement, right? But we'll tighten it down for now, put this off to the side. And then we'll get rid of this guy here and get it out of our way. Now this was 13 bucks from Hobby Lobby, but it's an amazing toolkit. Okay, now we're going to get everything ready to start wiring up. I like to have everything set that way. We're going to start with the chassis. Let me get some shrink tube. Just various sizes of shrink tube, whatever you need. It's important to use it though whenever you can. You don't want to not have shrink tube. So first thing we're going to do is let's do a Microdean connector for our speaker. All right, so we got one here. I like to use PTFE wire. You know, silicone wire is fine for people. They make it work and they're really good at it, and that's cool. I used to use it. It tends to, you know, it just wasn't for me. I like PTFE wire. So that's what we're going to use. Get some shrink tube on there. I just use my solder gun to heat that shrink tube up. I used to use a heat gun, but this works fine too if you just do it quickly. That is our Microdean connector for one of our speakers. All right. Now on this chassis, we're just going to go through the back and put it right in. And I'm going to use a little bit of glue though, because I need to keep it in place. I like using this stuff. It's really good. Rapid fuse. Don't need a lot. Just a little dab on each side. And right there, see, now that's in. That's in. And we're going to set this off to the side and let that glue kind of cure. It won't take long, but that's for our speaker right there, so that's good to go. And we can move on to the recharge port. This is a standard Switchcraft recharge port, like what is it, 2.1 millimeter or something. And we're gonna wire this up. Standard recharge port wiring, right? So like the prong that's all by itself is positive. You got this guy here, that this prong you can see is in line with this right here, which is what kills the power when a kill key is in. That is your negative to the battery, and then this guy all by itself is negative to the board. So that's how we're going to wire this up. I'm going to wire 3 positive switches coming off my terminal for my recharge port. One goes to the battery, one goes to the board, and one longer one will go all the way up for my Neopixel connector. That's just how I like to do it. It seems to be easier for me that way. All right, so that's how I'm going to do that. I'm using white for positive because I'm running out of PTFE wire. It doesn't matter what color you use as long as you remember what it is. I don't have a standard color for anything that I use. I just kind of memorize it as I'm installing. Okay. This black wire will go to the battery, and this blue one will go to the board. Negatives. Let's do the positive first. And we'll do to the battery. And to the board. And we need to put shrink tube on all that. Okay. Slide that all the way up. Two smaller pieces. That's our recharge port right there. So we're going to go ahead. Well, I need to get a kill key real quick. Hang on. Got to have a kill switch. We need to pull, or a kill key. We need to put this in the recharge port before we start wiring stuff up to the board. We'll slap this in here. Gotta make sure that's tight. Just like that. So now we've got our recharge port in there. We've got our Microdean connector in there. This is starting to come together a little bit, right? We'll go ahead and we'll put our kill key in. Now the power's cut, so we can safely start wiring stuff up. We want to do the battery first. So and you notice my battery's not pre-wired. I have one sitting over there that's pre-wired, but I'm going to wire this up and show you, if you may not know, how to solder to this to make it a static battery. Now, you know, on the negative, if you've ever tried this before, the negative pad's super easy to tin, right? Boom, done. Super easy to tin. But if you try to do that over here, it's not going to stick. I'm going to come over here on that 10K resistor that we have. I'm going to cut off a piece of the leg because I don't need that much of it. Right, so I'm going to cut off like that much off, if you can see that. There is a hole going through this positive terminal, or this positive nipple. If you could just feed that wire right through it, or that leg of that resistor, just feed it right through that hole. Might take you a little bit, but it's worth it. You see, I got it through that hole on both sides. I'm gonna bend it up. It always works better when I'm not doing it on camera. I bent it up so it fold right over that nipple right there. So now I can come over here and I can tin that. And that resistor leg will hold solder very well. just like that. So now that's all 10 and it's ready for me to wire to. I'm gonna come over here and I gotta figure out, okay, well, which side do I want my battery? It really doesn't matter. Just, pick one. This goes to the board, this goes to the board, to the board. This goes up top. These are my battery cables, so I'm gonna kind of say, okay, well, my positive is right here. All right. Negative is I'm just gonna leave. Well, let's see. Negative is right here. Tin these wires real quick. Just like that. And then we need to solder to the battery, obviously. That's on there. Before we put the back of the battery on, we need to glue the battery down. And this needs to be glued down into this shelf, right? So we'll move this over. A little bit right here. I'm going to take a little piece of art tape to hold it in place for a few minutes. This stuff right here works great. I'll just hold my battery in there until the glue cures. All right. So we got that where we want it to be. I'm going to come over here. We're going to glue in our negative terminal. And I think I'm actually going to cut that a little bit more because I don't want any slack in it. So now we've got our recharge port, our Microdean connector. We've got our battery all hooked up. Everything's good to go here. We can go ahead and move on to the switch. Right, this is going to be the activation switch. I usually make this the aux switch, but after talking to Phoenix Props, he was like, he had mentioned that the trigger would be cool for the blaster, and he was right. I just never even thought of it. So this is going to be the aux switch here, because the aux is what makes the blaster go pew pew. And one thing I forgot to show in the beginning was the tactile switches I'm using. My longer one is going to be for the side piece here. Right, it goes in there. And then, of course, my smaller one for this chassis here. So that's what we're going to do. We don't need this right now. Get this out of here. Try to keep this looking organized somewhat. I am not going to put shrink tube on these two joints. It makes the switch a little lopsided when I try to glue it in, and I need this to be pressed all the way up against the chassis, and it is isolated. So on this particular joint right here, no heat shrink. So just going to twist this up a little bit. I like to twist my wires whenever I can. So on my chassis, I have a little dot here. You can hardly see that, but there I put a little dot in the design. Trying to get it to where you could see it. Maybe right there. Yeah, right there. And that tells me where my switch needs to be glued down. And then there's a wire path in here. So I could take my wires and snake it all the way through. Come out this way. I know my switch will need to be glued right there. So I'm going to do that real quick. Good times. Just a little bit of this stuff goes a long way. And just kind of hold it there for a second. kind of hold it with my finger so I can come around here and clean my mess. So that's on there. That's my little, it's my switch mechanism right there. Everything looks good. I'm going to set this off to the side and let it cure. While we're waiting for that to cure, let's move on to the speaker. Let's just do the speaker real quick. 24 millimeter Smuggler's Outpost. Smuggler's Outpost. Microdean Connector. Let's get some wire. Shrink tube, heat shrink, whatever. Keep that on there. That's our Microdean connector for our speaker. But now you can mess this up if you don't pay attention, because now, you know, on this one we just put it in any way we wanted to. But you can see that prong, that gold prong is on the bottom. So that means this gold prong needs to be on the top of our speaker housing when it's orientated this way, right? So you just need to pay attention to how you glue that in. I've messed that up before, just trying to like burn through it. It's not good. You gotta come back and rip it out. Needs to be on the top. This way. Push that all the way in. Now we've got that sticking out of our speaker pod exactly where it needs to be. And that's going to need to cure. And now we need to come in here and carefully bend down those prongs on the back of this Microdean connector, because I need to make room for my speaker. Just like that. So that's good to go. And this is another thing that needs to sit and cure for a second. Let's move on to our switch right here. for our toggle between blade and blaster. Now this has 3 prongs. I don't need one of them. I'm going to cut one off the side. I just need the middle one and a side one. I'm just going to cut one off the side so I don't get confused. Now I got to switch the 2 prongs on it, just like that. Just like that. One of these is going to go to tangible font selection, and the other one is a ground wire. So I need to, this is where your color coding comes in handy. You need to remember what you're going to do or just write it down. But for me, you know, I use a blue and a brown over here on my switch. My brown is my ground. So I'm going to stay true to that. And I'm going to use blue because it's a blue LED, right? Or it's a blue switch. Actually, I'm not going to use blue because I'm going to use it from LED. What am I going to use? I'm going to use white. Yeah, we'll use brown and white for this switch. It doesn't matter what goes which to these prongs. Like one's ground, one goes to your 10K resistor. It doesn't matter. But we're just gonna put the ground wire in the middle. Some more shrink tube. We'll want to twist this up so that we can have some good wire management. One more time. It's our switch, right? So it's on right now because it's on the side where I didn't cut the prong off. So we're just gonna go ahead and flip it off. We're gonna put it in that chassis piece I made. Sometimes it's a little bit of a tight fit in here, but that's okay. We need to figure out first what side we want off. Forgot to do that. You gotta figure out if you want your switch to be flipped forward for blaster, then this needs to be in this orientation. It's hard to explain, but you'll know what I mean. It's not a big deal. It's just a matter of flipping your switch back and forth for functionality. I want mine to be like this. put that in there. Now we've got our switch inside of our chassis mechanism, and that's good to go. Put that off to the side. Now let's twist it one more time because it came loose. Now let's go to our LED. The longer leg on this LED is the positive side. So that is what we're going to, that's what we're going to resistor, okay? I'm going to do that first. I like to put it right up against the back of the LED so I don't have to mess with it downstream. Yeah, this is going to be positive. I'm going to make yellow. Negative LED. The negative side of the LED is going to go to LED pad 4 on the CFX. Okay. Now one more here. And the yellow, the positive, is going to go to straight to the power wire. Positive. And show you how we do that later. But for now, It's our blue LED all ready to go, right? I'll just twist it one more time. Now again, take a little bit of glue. Doesn't take much. Feed our LED through this hole that we made. Just like that. So now I've got that blue LED coming through that hole I drilled in the middle of this guy, and that's where it will stay. And I'll let that dry. We can also wire up our auxiliary switch, which is right here. That will be, let's make that brown and purple. You got to cut the two legs off of this switch you're not going to use, or they'll ground against that switch housing. It's like that. And we are going to put some heat shrink around these guys. It's a very small piece. The switch housing is all metal, all aluminum, and it will ground out if you're not careful. And I learned that the hard way too. Okay. This is another one of those pieces that needs to be glued in and cured for a little bit. We'll just get rid of these two screws. I know where I need to put a little bit of glue in there. I'm going to use some of this tape to hold it down for a while. I prefer to try to get this glue to cure by holding it rather than taping it if I can get away with it. I'll just hold it here for a few minutes. Super exciting. Okay. I may not be able to help it, so it's okay. We'll just tape that down and then we'll come back to it later. And we'll do this next. Before we get into this though, I'm gonna take a small break just to clear my head and walk away from this for a second, and I'll be right back. All right, and we're back. So now we're gonna wire up this Carl Chan-lit connector. Now, if you've ever had these before, you know it's just got a little bit of something on both sides where it was connected to a larger PCB sheet. So I'm gonna take I've got this 400 grit sanding block, and I'm just gonna sand. I like to do it off my desk so I don't make a mess, but usually just two sides. Make sure it fits into my PCB holder. Yeah, it's good to go. And now we'll just put the pins in. I don't use my helping hands to solder this up because it's very easy to damage the LEDs on the backside, and that's why I keep this holder. This is something that I've been doing for a long time. It works really well. So I'll take this holder here and I'll put this pins face down right in the holder just like that. And that's what I use to solder this up. So we'll solder these pins in real quick. Try to do it quickly. Here. Now, all those pins are soldered in. Now we need to solder our wires in. usually have a little fan going. I don't get this in my face, but it would ruin the mic, so I'm just blowing it away as I do it. I'll be fine. Now we can take this and throw it away. It's my little trash bucket right there. And we'll just take these and kind of twist them up a little bit for some wire management. You don't have to get crazy with it, but and now this is another thing that needs to be glued in, right? We've got that in our PCB holder. We're good to go there. We're going to set this off to the side so that it can cure. There's a lot of stuff that you need to glue in. So like instead of just gluing something in and saying you can't do anything, you can just bounce around to different things and keep this rolling. All right, so now we can go back to our speaker probably. And guess on my wires. Like, I don't know, maybe cut it here. Oops. Cut it here. Before I put my speaker in, I'm going to come and I'm going to clean the inside of my speaker channel. Just like that. I printed this upside down like this on my printer, so I know there's just a little bit of something here that needs to be cleaned out. Not much, but it prevents the holder from bowing out when I put the speaker in. So it's important to do. Better clean my mess. Oops. I can put a little bit of flux on here. My speaker over here. Do the other side. have a slight shake in my hand this morning because I haven't eaten breakfast yet. That makes it fun to try to do this. Now, if you took those Microdean connectors and you bent them back right like we did earlier, and everything's good, and when you put your speaker in, it will be flush with this speaker pod, right? That's what we want. We want it to be flush because we need to come back now. We need to glue this handle on, the speaker handle, onto the front of the speaker just like that, so that it can help you pull it out of the saber. And we'll do that right now. And it's another thing that has to cure. Speaker's got to be flush with that though, so that this handle has as much material to glue down onto as possible. So we're looking good there. Should be fine. Maybe just squeeze this down a little bit. Just a little bit. I will more than likely have to come back and sand this a little bit to make sure that it slides in and out of the handle okay, but that's fine. It doesn't, it takes like 20 seconds. But the handle now is all glued onto the speaker. You can see that in the light. We got our speaker in there, handle glued, Microdean connector. This hole that's in the speaker pod, that is for clearance for the kill key of the recharge port, so that you can put this in even when the kill key's in the saber. So that's what I put that there for. But this is good to go now. It needs to sit back and really cure. I'll put that off to the side. Let's start putting the top of this saber together. Yeah, that's that one. So we got our saber. We're going to want to put our Neopixel holder, our main connector in. We're just snake the wires through this middle window, because that's where we're going to do the last of our work. And we're going to screw this in. It's holding it's got our main PCB in there now, and with that hole that we drilled and tapped over here, sorry, right there, I put my little grub screw in. Now that's not going anywhere, and then that's nice and secure. So now we can actually start putting the top of the saber back together. First we want to take this box, throw it back in here, just like that. And we want to take this guy right here, Oops, I forgot a piece. I always forget this piece. This guy first goes in here. Just like that. And then this guy snaps in just like that. And one thing that I'm noticing is something that I had trouble with before. We're going to try to do it, but if I take this off, you can see that little wire path right there for your switches. That little groove that's cut in there. Man, it's just barely visible right here where the wires go. We're going to try to do it and see what happens. We'll do that now in case I need to do what I normally do and drill my own hole. I'm going to feed these wires through. Just do it one at a time. Gotta have patience on this part because it's wild. If I have too much trouble with this, like what I'm doing right now, I'm just going to put my own hole there. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to mark this guy. This is where my wire path is at. So if I take this off here again, you can see my mark that I did with my pencil. All right. It's going down here. I'm just having a lot of trouble getting it to go in there. So let's try it. Let's try it a little bit more. For the people who don't feel comfortable drilling holes like that into their saber, let's just try to fish it through for a little bit. Yeah, I got one. Okay. First one's the easiest though, and that one took a while. So let's get another one. In my personal one, I just drilled it. I drilled a hole to make it easier for myself, but we will try to suffer together here. Hey, I got it. Nice. So we got that. Grab the two bolts to put this on. Come over here and take this tape off. And we had our switch curing. And bolt this down. Okay. We got our switch plate on. We got our clicky click right here. We got those two coming out. We got to remember that that's our power, right? So purple and brown. Now we can go back to, let's put the rest of the saber together, right? So we put this here. Screw this in. That's good. Come over here and we'll put this guy in. That's in there. And we can come over here and we can put this guy in. Okay, I'm back. I am running out of memory on my laptop to do stuff like this. These install videos kind of push it to the limit, but I think I left off by saying we got this switch right here, the switch box all bolted down, good to go. These switch wires are coming out, so we're good there. We put this in, so now we're going to put these bolts in right here. Remember, we set these four off to the side so we knew that they went on the top. So we'll screw those down now. And we'll just snug those tight. Okay. And we'll get the other. That's the last one right here. Okay. And we'll get the four on the inside that are right here. Right in there. All right. I wasn't screwing that in at all. Fuck. Two more. Like I said, this would be a lot easier with just a long Allen screw or a long Allen wrench, but mine are worn down. And I like this toolkit, so it'll work. Some steel wool in there. Last one. Okay. So we got all 8 of those bolts in. Now we can take our LED piece here that we did all up, right? And it's all cured now. And we want to go through this hole. Now there's a hidden wire channel that goes through this hole right here, past here, and it snakes down to where we can get to this window, and that's what we want to do. And you can bend this a little bit if you need to. There we go. And you can see it pop out the window. And we just grab it with our tweezers and bring it up and through. Pop that all the way in like that. So that's good. And we'll take our clear acrylic lens cap, put it over there. And we'll take this piece that we unscrewed earlier and we'll screw it back in. Make sure that's nice and tight. Just like that. So now we've got our blaster in, got our switch in, we've got our Neopixel in, and we need to put our toggle switch in here for the blaster. This piece right here, remember, brown and white. So that will go through the same hidden wire channel as our LEDs went in. You'll feel it go. It's a lot easier than this switch over here. It's poking out. We'll pull that through the window. Snap this right into place. Just like that, see? Now our switch is in here with that little chassis piece that I made for it. Push it down in there. And if you need to, if this switch is just a little taller than it needs to be, you come over here and you can clip the top of it off. Just be careful. Don't snap too much of it off. And then the back side of your switch has these 2 nubs. Of course, your toggle switch here needs to go in between those 2 nubs. And then we'll screw this on. And we're going to screw this on and test it out. You can feel it if it's good, and I can feel it there, so it's good. One thing I don't like is this aluminum piece will turn sometimes when you're turning the switch. So what I might do is sometimes when I do it, I'll go back, and once I got this fully installed and I know that everything is working properly, I'll unscrew this piece right here, put just a little bit of glue on the threads, and screw it back down into place where I want it, so that way it stays in place while I'm toggling this switch. So I can feel the switch going, and it's doing exactly what I want it to. So everything is good up top here, and we've got all of our wires snaked through here. Matter of fact, we can come over here and just make them even. Right, so now we got everything that needs to happen here is good to go. So we'll just leave that there for now. We'll put this off to the side. And we will start wiring up our board to our chassis. And we can take this tape off now because this battery is adhesed to the chassis and it's good to go. Don't ever solder with the SD card in, so we'll take that out. Now, I'm going to do the obvious things first, like the positive and the negative and the speaker wires. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do this switch here. Remember, this is going to be our auxiliary switch, not our main switch. So I'm going to turn the camera off to do this so that I can kind of save some memory, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about the stuff that gets tricky, or we can walk through the rest. But basically what I'm doing off camera, my negative, or my negative, my positive to the recharge port, my two speaker wires, and my switch wires, which is pretty self-explanatory. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, I got my positive, my negative, my auxiliary switch, and my ground for my switch. They're all wired up. Now we got to get into wiring up, or the speakers are wired up too. Now we need to get into wiring up the tangible font selection, which is going to be that 10K resistor. And this is how you wire it to the board. You can find this in the manual, but I just saved the picture. Right here, right? So you need to, that's that 10K resistor right over here. This the one that's closer to the board. You can find this on the manual too, so if it's not showing up on my phone, it's easy to find. So we need to wire that resistor up to those two pads, the green dot and the red dot. That's where the two ends of the resistor go. So that's what we're going to do right now. And I like to put these right onto the board. And we'll do it like this. You do it however you want to do it, obviously, but I like to just put that resistor to the bottom of the board. I'll fold it over, make sure, it's good to go. And yeah, and then now it's out of my way and I don't have to worry about it. So that's a tangible font selection. Now what we got to do is we got to start making our wiring on top. We can wire on top of the board going forward. Right, so let's do our negative for Neopixel first, which we said it was blue. lied about the top of the board. We're going to do this on the bottom of the board. This last wire here. Normally on a CFX, when you do a Neopixel setup, you'd use all 4 pads. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. All 4 of those pads, but we're going to use pad number 4 for our blue LED. So we're only going to use 3 pads for Neopixel. Alright, we're going to jump these pads though. We gotta I'm just making my little jumper wires out of 30 gauge wire. That's all you need. So you can see I jumped, if you can see in the camera, I jumped the LED pads 1 and 2, and now I'm going to take from 2 and go all the way to 3 over here on the side, but I'm going to leave 4 open for our blue LED. Okay. That's our negative for our Neopixel connector. Now let's do, we already have the positive for Neopixel connector. So now let's do our data. And we'll just go one component at a time. And we get our data line, green data line. Now let's do a blue line, because remember, for our blue LED for our blaster, we made the negative blue. And that goes to the LED pad 4. Okay, cool. Now I've got that handled. Let's go ahead and do our activation switch, which is up here, right? This switch right here. And we made this switch, you know, purple and brown. Purple was the switch, and we said brown was the ground wire. So let's grab a purple. I'll put that purple right on the activation pad. All right. Let's go ahead and throw a brown wire up here for a ground. This one brown wire coming off the board is going to be good for both our toggle switch and our activation switch. I'm going to orientate myself. Okay. Now for our tangible font selection over here where we put that 10K resistor right underneath the board there. We made our toggle switch. One wire coming off was a ground wire, and the other wire coming off that switch was a white wire. So we're going to use a white wire here. If you don't color code or color match correctly while you're doing this, you will just be hella confused. And this white wire can go to either of the pads that we put the prongs for the 10K resistor on, right? I'm just going to put it over. I'm going to pick one and put it over here. Just like that. So let's think now. Got my Neopixel. Cool. Got my activation switch. Cool. Got my LED blue wire plus a brown wire. Or blue wire plus a hot wire. So that's fine. And then we got our tangible font selection, which will be a white wire and a brown wire. So we've got everything here that we need. Now we can put the board down into the shelf where it's meant to go. All right. And I will use a little bit of adhesion on this board to keep it in place. Not much. If I use just a little bit, then I can take it up if I need to. Hopefully I don't, because taking this saber apart is a super pain. But just a little bit to hold it in place never hurt anybody. And we'll just come down in here and snap it into place. Just like that. Now the board is exactly where I wanted it, right here. You've got access here, if you can see it in the light. through this hole to your micro USB and your SD card, so everything is good there. And all of our wires here. And now this is what I like to do. Bring all my wires here. Pick the shortest wire, which is about right here, and I'll just make all these even. They're nice and even. I could take a big piece of shrink tube, put it over these wires. Oops. Kind of like this. Now everything is there nice and neat until I'm ready to, you know, take that off there. Now we're going to come back to the saber. Unscrew this guy. And we need to figure out where the bolt on the back of this trigger needs to be so that there's enough travel to hit this switch. Okay. We'll just slide this in. Should slide right in. When you get to about here, you want to take all your wires. That's why I put them in that heat shrink and just pull them up. So they're nice and out of your way. So I slid that in there. I unscrewed this trigger just a little bit and you can hear it clicking. That's exactly where I want that switch to be. Yeah, that's looking good, right? So now that I know exactly where that bolt on that switch needs to go, I'm going to take this chassis and I'm going to push it back out carefully. Now, how do you get that bolt to stay in that switch, right? So take a piece of thick gauge wire here, 22 gauge actually. And take just a little bit of glue, put it on this thing. I'm going to take this wire and just dip it in the glue so that I can put just a little bit on the inside bolt. You want just a little bit right on the center of the bolt, and that's not going to be something that I can show you on camera. But the inside bolt of that screw, and then just let it sit. And then I'm going to let this sit, make sure that that switch is fully cured and that won't go anywhere. And then I will come back and we will finish this guy up. It's almost done. All right. Okay, now the glue on that bolt is dry and we've almost reached the crescendo here. So we're going to take this chassis, we're going to slide it in just like we did before. There's a lot of cool chassis out for this Saber. This is just one that I came up with a long time ago, and I like it because it's mine. So it's very important that the glue is dry on that bolt before you start doing this, because if it's still wet and you go pressing on it and you get glue on that tactile switch, it will glue together and then the tactile switch won't work anymore. So this is the one time where I had to glue something and then I had to step away from it and have some patience, because like that will ruin it if you're not patient, right? So now I can take this piece of shrink tube that I put on here, and I can literally just pull this off. This is probably the most, this is my least favorite part of the install, or of any install really, because I try not to do this at all. But I'm gonna have to take these two sides of wires and I got to join them together here, so that everything works, right? So everything is color coded except for one thing. The power wire for our LED. Remember, I went blue for the negative, which I've got a blue wire over here, so that's fine. But my power wire for my LED is yellow, because I didn't have any. I don't think I had any. Actually, I had a white wire. I could have done that, but I didn't. I made it hard. So the main power wire right here, which is coming off the recharge port, it needs to go to the white wire for, our main lit connector, and then also the yellow wire for the LED module in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to do this piece off camera. And then because it's kind of a mess right now, it's just me joining wires, but just know, like, it's just a color coded deal, right? You've got only one brown wire off your chassis for your ground, but over here we had literally, I think we had two ground wires here, one for our switch up here and one for our toggle switch. So those all get joined together. So I'm going to do all this off camera. I'll come back when it's all joined. I'll show you what it looks like when it's all joined, and then I'll close this up on camera and everything else. And yeah, we're almost done. Be right back. Okay, so I finally got all that done, and that's what that looks like, when you have to join everything together. And there's going to be a little bit of wire slack in there, but that's okay. What I just do is, now we're just going to neatly take this metal door. We're going to neatly tuck our wires in here and put this door right over it. Just like that. And then we'll lock this down with the 4 screws to the door. Oops. My tool has lost its magnetic grip. And one more. Just like that. So now that door is closed. We got good clicky action here for our button, right? Our auxiliary switch, or our activation over here. Our auxiliary switch over here. And then I got to sand this down, but I can show you one that's done already in mine, so you get the idea. This is what the finished one looks like, right? And we'll just take this, slide it right in here. Push that in, and then we can take our pommel cap, and it screws all the way on. And that is the finished saber. I will do a separate demo of this saber because it's for a customer, So I wanted to just have its own separate demo. But that's pretty much how you install this, and then we'll go do a separate video going over the config file to make all this work. All right, thanks.